for joining us. This may ruin you today because I don't think you will ever look at a disc profile again after we go through this today because of information that you have in the disc, but information that isn't in the disc that you need to gather someplace else. And it has to do with generations. And I don't know if we have all the generations represented here.
Not all of them, but we do have, and I thought this was interesting, Brad. It says for the first time in recorded history, there are 5 generations that are actively participating in the workforce, which is really kind of incredible. So, we are focusing on these 5 that are currently in the workforce, Brad.
Right. Gen Alpha is not yet quite in the workforce.
No.
But it's interesting, like the traditionalist, and so many people have actually come out of retirement to take part-time jobs and so forth to make ends meet. So that's very unique. So and just so we know, and different people have these for slightly different ages. That I think we used Purdue University.
We did.
But traditionalists typically born 25 to 45, baby boomers 46 to 64. Sandy, my business partner, was on the beginning of that, 46. I actually relate more to the Gen X, but I was born in 1961.
Right.
Then you got Gen X, you got millennials, and you got your Gen Zs. And again, these can vary. I've seen where the baby boomers ended in 1960 or 61 too.
This is the traditionalist, Brad, you were talking about. Some of the things that they were shaped by include the Great Depression, World War II, the onset of the beginning of broadcast, movies and radio. What else are we missing?
Well, we're not going to spend a lot of time on these. I just want to set the basis for realizing how much the time period that you grew up affects your thinking style. And George, who works for me, that I guess George is mid to late 20s.
Yeah.
It's just amazing because when we talk about things, the things that he relates to are things that happen in the latter part of my life, and yet I grew up when they were still the first car phone, and it was huge. It was just huge, and I remember it. And today it's like people, how would you even live without being able to text each other? But how we grew up, when we grew up, what we went through. So the traditionalists. Then you got the baby boomers. That was after the war. That a lot of children born when all the men came home from the war. A lot of children. It was the Cold War. There was civil rights. There was a lot going on. But it was a time that people, I think, moved ahead. The technology that you see, the nice modern American family that you see on some of these TV shows, the perfect family, and that was kind of the mentality. Then you hit the Gen X's, and you had yuppies, and you had dinks, double income. It was a time that people were fairly prosperous. It was a fall of some of the communism. It was there was a lot going on for the Gen Xers.
Very much so. What about the millennials?
Then the millennials, and my wife happens to be a millennial at the very beginning of that. A lot of change, and we're only talking the US. I mean, Europe, there was a lot bigger change. My wife grew up in Poland, and she remembers it was communist when she was born until 1988. So her mentality was, there's Russian tanks outside the city that she grew up in, and you're compliant and you do what you're told or else. But I think millennials were the first generation that maybe people begin to think, I'm not going to do as good as my parents.
Interesting.
That there's a lot of things happening. And then we go to the
this is
the Gen Zs. And really, I mean, I would not want to be a Gen Z. I would not want to be it. It is a changing time. There's inflation. They grew up during the pandemic. I really think it's harder than ever to purchase a house today than it's been in probably 50, 60 years. It's the rent. They're facing so many issues today. And really, they grew up knowing 9/11. They grew up, I don't know what the Great Recession is, the bubble in 2008, there was a housing bubble. So, but this shapes people's thoughts. And we always teach in our class that environment is one of the factors. Some of it's heredity, some of it's the environment you grew up with, some of it's your role models. So they grew up in a different environment, and we'll tie this together and show you how that ties in with DISC right now.
Right. So let's take a look at all of them, right? Kind of like in one graphic. But you can see that the communication needs, their work styles, all of these things are different from generation to generation.
Right. And, my dad was the traditionalist generation, and that's so true. No news is good news.
Yes.
And do what you're told. You know what? You're just lucky to kind of have the opportunity here. Work hard, don't ask any questions, and you'll get ahead.
Yeah.
With my generation, it was still, I think you find a place to work, you work there 20, 30 years, whether it's a steel mill or whether it's a white collar job.
Yeah.
But you go, and as long as you work hard, and put in your dues,
Yeah.
it's not going to happen right away, but you work hard and you put in your dues, you will be successful. You will grow with the company.
Yeah.
And you'll probably be there for years to come.
Right. Right.
Gen X has started seeing this moving jobs and more opportunities, and more things being available. Millennials, of course, now all of a sudden, jobs are more short term, and you're having freelance workers, and you're having
Well, it's a gig economy. They plan to just not work at one place. So
and I mean, Gen Z, like the commercial on TV, the girl that says, I love my car. I've been through 5 boyfriends and 8 jobs, but I still have my same car. That's
So that's great. So yeah. But check this out. This is a nice graphic. I think that what we're going to get into next with Brad is how we can use our assessments to kind of bridge the gaps, right? Because whether you're a traditionalist or a Gen X or a Gen Z, there's information that's going to kind of bridge that generation gap.
And we'll show you how it's just crazy how some things have not changed over the last 50 years.
Right.
And some things have completely flipped upside down.
Right. So all right, you ready to jump into this?
Yes.
All right, we're going to put you on the spot.
So we are making the assumption that everybody on today is somewhat familiar with DISC.
Right.
Reading graphs. And of course, our DISC is the 3 graph. The first is the public or the mass. Second is the stress. And the third is the mirror, or how you see yourself. So we put typical styles. Most people are S's or C's. 80% of people are S's or C's. So that's what we made this person. They get a little bit more task oriented under pressure. Their D goes up, but these 2 are identical.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So one's my age, one is George, 25. Right. So if you were communicating, do you think there would be a big difference in how you communicate or just talk to this person if you're that similar in the DISC? Any answers?
If anybody wants to use the chat window to chime in, that's great. Let's see here.
Yeah, it's going to be similar.
Yeah.
I mean, they have similar styles. If you adapt and you communicate, very similar. If I was looking at this, to me, these 2 people look identical.
Exactly.
But that is important to know the DISC, because either one of these people want you to speak their language. They want you to talk SC, and they want you to know. But now we throw in one other thing.
All right. So let's take a look at this.
How people think in a team. And this is another one of our assessments, whether somebody's more a theorist, they want to brainstorm all the time, an executor, just let me do my job, an analyzer, a manager, or a strategist.
Exactly.
Identical.
Yeah.
And this is very typical and average, but no difference in thinking style. So now if you're managing these people, if you got to go in and manage these people, would you manage these 2 people very similar based on what you've seen so far?
Again, I mean, I would say yes, because why? I mean, they're very similar. They're going to respond to the same things.
I mean, if I just had a short-term worker or somebody come in for a project or something, this is probably enough. And we use this a lot with the recruitment, where they want to know the personality and they want to know the fit of where they should put them in a team.
Right.
Now, here's where it gets really strange. And what has changed over time is the values. Now, typically for the baby boomer, that we have 4 values we look at. We worked with AT&T developing this in the 80s and 90s, but they look at loyalty, equality, personal freedom, and justice. My generation, it was all about loyalty.
Yes.
And it was all about justice and win-win.
Win-win, right.
You were loyal to the company, you worked hard, and if you worked hard, they were supposed to reward you. It was loyalty and justice. And equality, we don't want that. We don't want personal freedom. You're here on our time, on our dime.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, 20, 30 years ago, when I first got into this, there was companies that said, I won't hire anybody that doesn't have that style because there's high turnover, that I can't retain this, that they're hard to manage. So now you move forward to the Gen Zs, and everybody's that way.
Yeah.
They're all that way.
Right.
About 80% of Gen Zs actually in the workplace, not talking about personally, in the workplace, have high equality. They have high personal freedom, low loyalty, and low justice.
Interesting, right?
So what happened? And you know, literally my generation, the baby boomers, you know, that's what some of us are saying. What happened to this generation? And this generation is saying, man, why don't these old dudes get with it? You know, it's like, you know, it's like talking to my dad or something. But here's the thing, is the Gen Zs are going to be around a long time after the boomers aren't here.
Yeah, that's right.
They're going to inherit the planet. So if we want to be effective as managers, and so to manage this person, for me to manage George, and one of the questions that I saw come up, what is the hardest generation to manage? And any questions or any answers? Lots of questions. Yeah. What do you think the toughest generation is to manage? Some different answers. Actually, the one that you understand the least. It's the same way with DISC. The hardest style to get along with is the style that's the most polar opposite. For me, Gen Zs, no doubt. But for a Gen Z that might be managing a boomer or a traditionalist, they feel the same way about us.
Yeah.
So what has happened? What do you think happened? Did this generation fail us, or did we fail a generation?
Now that's interesting.
And I'll give you one story that's real quick. I just sold my house. After 30 years living in the same place, I sold my house to my neighbor's daughter.
Okay.
I've known her for years. She grew up next to me. We gave her a good deal. We worked with her. She's a young woman, 3 young children, hard worker. She's a freelancer. She does graphic design in her home. And she had been pre-approved. She was ready to close. I mean, we're literally going to the bank to sign the closing.
Yeah.
And she calls just beside herself that she literally got on to get her work assignment one morning, and everybody in the company had been pink slipped.
Wow.
No notice, no 2-week notice, nothing, just you're unemployed.
Wow.
And she had just bought a house. She has 3 little kids. She had been working there for several years and she was doing a good job, and nothing. Just so we say, well, this generation has no loyalty. Well, they've been shown no loyalty.
Exactly.
That when you grow up and you see Elon Musk come in and just, you know, wide scale, you know, with Twitter, just, you know, 2/3 of the employees are gone, or, you know, but corporations are not loyal the way they used to be either.
Yeah.
And so when you really look at this, you kind of say, is it the generation, or is it what we have taught the generation? And, you know, it's interesting because my generation, I think our saying was, you have to earn my trust. You have to earn my respect. I remember that. Earn my trust. You know what George said the other day, his generation, you have to earn my loyalty.
Yeah.
To my generation, it's a given because I was given that back.
Yeah.
To this generation. And George is one of the most loyal employees that we have. I don't know where his was when he came in, but you know what? If you show the loyalty, if you give, you know what? Maybe they'll reciprocate.
Exactly.
And we'll show you how to manage this style. So, and then go to the BAI, which is the motivators.
Right. Yeah. This is actually,
and that's changed. So really, this is what we're showing. For these 2 people, if you don't know their work values and you don't know their behavioral attitudes, what motivates them, you will never manage these people correctly.
Right.
My generation, typically, if you see the E is the highest and the P, it was about economic, it's about what we made, and it was about the position.
Exactly.
Again, if you worked hard and you did your job, you're going to get ahead, you're going to be a manager, you're going to do this, you're going to make more money. That is what drove us. The generation today, look, social humanitarian is one of the biggest driving factors. Even your own kids, I've heard them talk about, I wouldn't work for a corporation that didn't support this.
Right.
Or I wouldn't work for, I mean, people are looking at the social and moral and the involvement and charity. I mean, they're making decisions on all kinds of things. In fact, if it wasn't for inflation and that it's so hard to even get ahead today, I don't think this generation would even put money as a factor.
Yeah.
It's more about life fulfillment, balance, transparency, opportunity. This is a generation that wants to learn.
Yeah. Oh, very much so.
The,
Yeah.
the problem is there's so much of an overload sometimes
Of
that it's,
information.
yes. So, but it's a generation that wants to learn. So how do you deal with this? Because I'm telling you, this, when you have a values crisis, you have a problem.
Right.
With the disc, you can solve it. Values, that's harder.
That's a tough one.
So you don't want to go there, and you don't want to motivate people the wrong way. So
Yeah.
so how do you, in a nutshell, how do you work with people of different age groups and generations?
All right.
And we'll show you.
All right, here we go.
Number one, you have to have a common goal.
Makes sense.
If look, two people raising a kid, they have a common goal.
Right.
Two people trying to complete a project, they have a common goal.
Right.
I remember George, when I first interviewed him, I interviewed several people for that job. And I got on his social media, and on his LinkedIn or Facebook or one of them, he said, I really want an opportunity, that I'm working 3 jobs and this is my, but I wish I could find one place that would be home to me.
Wow.
That made a difference for me.
Yeah.
I said, you know, he's motivated. I remember when he came in, I said, it wasn't just a common goal to make money and do, I said, we have a common goal. You want an opportunity to get ahead and make something yourself. And I want to give you that opportunity because I believe that you have great potential.
Yeah.
That was the common goal, and it's never stopped since then. Mutual respect. I don't always understand him. He doesn't always understand me, but I respect him.
Yeah.
A matter of fact, he's come up with some pretty amazing stuff sometimes,
course,
especially when we're talking about technology, that I respect his knowledge.
Yeah, and his perspective. Yeah.
Tolerance has been the hardest thing for me, and maybe for him, because, you know, in my generation, you didn't have your cell phone, you didn't have any phone. You know, the generation today, that while people are working, you know, a lot of jobs, they're texting while they're working and doing this. And, you know, my generation, that, well, that's just goofing off or wasting time or
not on my time.
But when you grow up from you're 5 years old,
yeah, you're always on.
And just being able to talk about that and having some tolerance and saying, look, again, it's some of the generational things. It's some of how he grew up versus how I grew up.
Very much so.
That people have to be tolerant of me saying the same stories 5 times, you know. As you get older, it's like, okay, we got to be tolerant. We'll listen one more time. An open environment for communication.
Yeah, that's an important one.
That there's no stupid answers, and there's no stupid questions.
Right.
And sometimes we'll just throw things out there for the front office, and what's your opinion? What's your opinion? And because there's many times there's not a right answer, it's just an opinion or a viewpoint. But if you shut people down or you make people feel foolish, or you know what, they will shut right down, especially an S or a C. Make it so that it's open. Make it so that people want to contribute. And last of all, sincere appreciation.
Yeah.
And I told George yesterday, this is the second time I've used this as an example now. And I said, I hope you see how much I appreciate what you've done here, that I never thought I would be using you as an example in some of my training, but you have really grown in that role. I really respect what you've done. And I really appreciate that you're part of the team. And I know you all do. Hey, sometimes, John, I hate to tell you this, but they say they miss George more than you when you're out.
What?
So George asked me something yesterday. Go back to the graphs.
Yeah.
So what if you're a manager and you're a baby boomer, one of the different generations, and you're all about, you know, performance, getting things done, and now you're managing a Gen Z, and their BAI is their high social humanitarian.
Yeah.
Well, just throwing money at it isn't going to work.
No.
Just but you know, I remember Marchesa here when she was into she came up with an idea we should recycle from the office.
Yeah, I remember.
And we started recycling.
Yeah.
Somebody else came up with an idea we should support this a walkathon, or you know, somebody else like find good social causes, find good community things. Get people involved. Maybe the person that has this, get them involved. Don't do something political, but do something that people can agree. And why not do some good? Why not appeal to the social humanitarian side of things? It certainly wouldn't hurt, but even a little bit of time dedicated to that, that's
It goes a
meaningful to
long
that
way.
person.
Well, I'll tell you, Joshua, my son, who is finishing up college, is looking at internships that he's hoping will turn into a job, that I'm hoping will turn into a job. But one of the things that we were discussing is he said, I'm leaning towards these two companies, but I like this one better because it has a smaller carbon footprint. And I thought to myself, how do you even know what the carbon footprint is? But it was one of the factors that he was using to decide where he was going to work, you know. And for me, I'm like, just how much are they going to pay you, and then take that job, right? But that's not him. That's not that generation.
And I
you
hate to
gotta
say it,
respect
I don't
that.
even think that would be in one of my top 10 things as far as the check boxes for a job.
Yeah, and he was, I mean, we were just discussing it and he just mentioned, you know, well, this one has a smaller carbon footprint. I'm like, well, good for you. But you know what? We kind of joke about it, but think about Subaru. I mean, Subaru actually actively advertises the fact that they are a zero carbon emitter. Like they offset. And because of that, not only do they get customers, they get workers. They get workers with a mindset of, I'd rather work for this company.
But you know,
all
it's
things
funny
being
because
equal.
it's talking again about how you grow up. My generation, we didn't know about carbon footprint. We didn't know about global warming. It
Right.
wasn't even a topic. It wasn't even a word back then.
Right.
And now the generation today, that they hear more and more
About
and more.
climate
That's
change.
what they
Yeah,
grew up
that's
with.
what they're,
So
yeah.
so
And
it
good
makes
for them.
sense.
Yeah. But
That's why it wouldn't be on my top 10 list, but it's right up there near the top of, it's actually a factor that.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but I bet as long as we have common goals and mutual respect, like you were talking about, you know, we figured out what we need to do. You know, I helped him prioritize what is your priority for this job, and then we move together and we move forward together. So yeah, that's awesome.
But you understanding that too, because you know, you might be looking at it thinking, nuts, if he takes that one, I'm still gonna have to supplement his income. If he takes this one that doesn't care about the carbon.
This one, this job means he'll be living in my basement for the rest of his life. So, or at least the rest of my life. So
yeah, the rest of your life.
All right. So Brad, you said you were going to leave some time for some questions. So we are coming up on that half-hour mark. So if you have some questions, feel free to use that chat feature. We'll try to get those answered for you right away. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and just advance this so you can take a look at those 5 steps. Again, I think there's a lot of wisdom contained in that.
Well, when I remember I did a seminar one time, and the number 5 was sincere appreciation, and this lady raised her hand and she said, that's big on my list. And she said, my boss every day before I go home thanks me and says he appreciates me. And somebody else in the room said, you know what, but after a while, it's just, you know, it's just like, hey, how are you doing?
Right.
It doesn't mean anything if it's just every day. That's And she said, no, you don't know my boss. She said, when he says he sincerely he mentioned something I did that day for him. He mentioned something different than the day before. If you sincerely appreciate someone, it will come across.
Yeah. And I guess that's the emphasis. It's sincere appreciation, you know, and again, I think that spans all the generations. I don't think there's a generation out there that doesn't respond positively to sincere appreciation. So we are coming up on our half hour. We want to thank you guys for taking time out of your busy day to join us today. I do want to point out that our People Keys 4D report is the one that uses DISC, the team's thinking style. So when we looked at the graphs, especially the last 2, the values and the behavioral attitudes, those are all part or included in our People Keys 4D report. So you can connect with us if you don't have access to that in your People Keys account right now. And I'm looking at this book on your screen, and it says it's co-authored by Dr. Bradley Smith. Any idea who that is, Brad?
Yes, I was just looking at a question.
Okay.
Then would it be better for a DISC trainer facilitator to market to their own generation or learn about the other generational differences? Hey, Chuck, how are you doing?
Oh, that's good.
Hey, I think being that crossover that Leia's on, I mean, obviously, you know, you're great with your own generation, but I'm telling you, more and more and more corporations, especially dealing with the younger workers, to
Yeah.
come up and be able to maybe do some manager training, and, you know, knowing the difference in managing the Gen Zs, using some of these same things that, I mean, there is a need for,
Yeah,
there
very
is
much
a
so.
tremendous need for that.
Yeah.
Let me say that, because the boomers are retiring, and the boomers do have a lot of knowledge.
Yeah.
But the problem is the younger generation has the technology, they have, so
They know
they
different
really
things.
do, we need to pass that on. And but that is, I think that is one of the greatest challenges. And Sandy,
Yeah.
said that to me back in the late 90s, that there's going to be one of the biggest vacuums when all the boomers retire,
Yeah.
of just that knowledge base leaving, and younger generations that may not even glean that, but yet have their own knowledge.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah. So, and thanks, Chuck. That was an insightful question.
So
Yeah.
yes, I put this, I did write a book. My wife is an author. So just to show you the generational things. So my wife is a millennial,
Mhm.
and I'm a baby boomer. And we wrote this together, and look whose name is on top.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm not as good at managing or maybe I'm
Yeah.
just more tolerant, that I
Yeah,
thought
there you
it's
go.
better, let the millennial.
She
No.
told you it had to be alphabetical, right?
No, I think she did more of the work, if I was honest. So, but yes.
Yeah, and again, that's available for download at diskinsights.com. Again, thank you guys. We will try to hang out for just a couple minutes if there's any last minute questions. Otherwise, if you have to jump off, we appreciate your time. We want to be respectful of that half-hour time limit we put on ourselves. Thank you, Christina.
Mhm.
Again, you know how to get a hold of us if you need to. We're planning our next webinar, which should be about
June 20th.
June 20th or so. Again, another Thursday. So we'll get some information out to you as that kind of develops.
Yeah, actually, the next session is talking about how to gain major clients by providing solutions instead of products.
Yeah.
And we're going to share some of the things that we've done over the years when we landed some of our biggest manpower in Microsoft and the FBI, that how we kind of went about it, that it's a little different than product sales, it's more solution sales. But with the portal and things we have, we'll easily show you how to do that.
Excellent. All right. Well, I see you guys again. Thank you for the kind words. We will see you in about 30 days or so. Take care.
Thank you all.